Hello, everyone, and welcome to the RealClear Politics Takeaway for Tuesday, February 15th. I'm Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of RCP.
I'm Carl Cannon, Washington Bureau Chief.
Good morning, Carl. It's been a while.
How are you tanned, ready, and rested?
I am, yes, not necessarily in that order. But Carl, let's talk about a couple stories regarding the media. The first one, we learned yesterday afternoon that the judge in the case of Sarah Palin versus the New York Times decided to dismiss that case even while the jury is deliberating on the case. I'm no legal expert, Carl, but I've never seen anything quite like this.
No, I haven't either. And there's the judge, Judge Rakoff, federal judge, what he suggested was that this case is going to be appealed no matter who wins. And the appellate courts, and maybe the United States Supreme Court is what he's implying, is going to settle it. And he wants his thinking to be part of the record. Now, he wants to participate in this historic case. And why I say it's historic is that Palin is challenging really another New York Times case, New York Times v. Sullivan. She's sort of, let me rephrase that. She's saying she was libeled by the Times, but the issues have been bubbling up in libel law in this country, all over the country, about whether the standard, the old standard of actual malice for public officials should be rethought. That, what constitutes actual malice is just sloppiness malice, is opinions always on the same side malice, which is what her lawyer implied. And other cases also involving the Times. Nick Kristof libeled Stephen Hatfield. The courts ruled that Stephen Hatfield was a public figure. This was the anthrax case. Well, he was only a public figure because the New York Times named him. So right. There's these issues bubbling around, a lot of them involving the Times, that lawyers who do this and do this kind of law, and the appellate courts think maybe the Supreme Court wants to weigh in again. So that's what he's doing. This guy, he clearly doesn't like Palin. He had some snide comment when the case was delayed a couple weeks ago. Said she wasn't vaccinated, of course. Which his attitude toward her may be even part of the record. But he has some thoughts about libel law that he wants on the record, and I'm actually curious to see what they are.
Well, and he cited apparently the fact that her lawyers failed to make the case that malice was involved as a reason for dismissing it. They did not meet the standard. So I guess we'll see how this all works out. I noticed, Carl, they carried that story on the front page of the New York Times today. But one story they did not carry, not on the front page, but not in any page over the weekend, was this bombshell report filing by John Durham, special counsel, investigating the Russiagate collusion story, the origins of it, to see whether there was any wrongdoing. And in his filing on Friday, he had mentioned that there was that Michael Sussman, the lawyer who has been indicted, who was worked for the Clinton campaign and Perkins Coie, that he had interacted with tech executive A, who was identified as this guy, Richard, I think it was Richard Jaffe. And the implication was that Jaffe had, collected some non-public, some private data, DNS data from a contract that his company had to manage the White House servers. And effectively, the way that it was presented was that there was spying that had taken place on Trump and Trump's campaign, not only at Trump Tower, but also when he was president of the United States in the executive office. And this obviously garnered a lot of attention in right-leaning media, but nothing, not even a mention from the New York Times, Washington Post, and all the sort of mainstream media culprits. Now, Charlie Savage wrote a quote-unquote news analysis piece in the Times this morning where he basically, went through and dismissed this and said, this is just this is much ado about nothing. Some of this information was already public. We had reported on it earlier. This is just, ginning up the right-wing base and Trump's conspiracy theories, and basically spent 1,500 words trying to deconstruct it and dismiss it. But that's the only coverage that it's gotten in the New York Times, Carl. What do you make of this, and why is it thus that there was no coverage? I mean, I can promise you, if there had been another legal filing that would have implicated or even suggested something nefarious on behalf of Trump or his associates, the New York Times and the Washington Post would have covered it. They would have put it on page 1.
Well, I agree with that. And John Durham is, like the judge in the Palin case, he's highly respected prosecutor, federal employee, worked with the Justice Department for years. But I was wondering about if this is just bias against this narrative, or if this story is just so old. Durham seems to be taking so long. I covered the special counsel's office when Bill Clinton was president. There were all these investigations, and they took forever. And Janet Reno, she turned against the statute, the very statute that allows for special prosecutors. Remember, this came out of the Watergate reforms. Now, this is not under that. This is a separate thing, but it's the same principle, which is you have a prosecutor with an unlimited budget and unlimited time. And like Robert Mueller, they use it, they spend unlimited funds. But there's a sense, I wonder in the media if this story has just moved on. I mean, this guy's taking forever, and there's so many other things going on in the country, not, accepting imminent Russian invasion of Ukraine, China's emergence as this dominant authoritarian power worldwide, and 2 years into COVID and no end in sight. I just wonder if the story's too old, if he's taking too long.
Hold on a second. Wait a minute. Trump had famously said during the campaign, and there are clips of him talking to Leslie Stahl from 60 Minutes saying, the media has been ignoring, this is in October of 2020, saying, the media has been ignoring the big story, which is, they spied on my campaign. And she's like, no, they didn't. There's no proof of that. Trump had been saying this for some time. I mean, whether it was last year or 2 years ago or 4 years ago, Carl, if true, if it's proven, if there's if the revelation that the Clinton campaign
that's not
orchestrated this. So,
but that's not proven, Tom. That's an implication of this.
I understand, Carl, yeah. but that's a big story, right?
Tom, I'm not.
That's like Watergate on steroids.
I'm not. Well,
okay, and so
wait. Hold it. Watergate on steroids. Now you've pushed one of my buttons. As you know,
oh boy,
my father.
I can see this podcast is going to be exceed our 10-minute limit.
My father, who worked for the Washington Post for many years and covered the White House, used to have a rule, and the rule was when somebody calls up on the phone and says, "I've got a story that'll make Watergate look like a picnic," my dad hung up on him. So let's not get carried away. Your basic contention, which is that this is yet another evidence of the double standard when it comes to reporting on Trump in the mainstream media. I won't argue with that. That's, in my mind, inarguable. I was just offering you another idea. Tom, we've been in the news business. There are cycles. There are other things going on in the news business. The news cycle has an energy to it. It's called a cycle. Durham reminds me of these stories you'd read as a kid. Sir Blanton Smythe, what turned out to have been a Soviet spy in the 40s, and you think to yourself, he's some British guy. I never heard of Sir Blanton Smythe. It's 40 years. It's too late. Who cares? I'm just offering a thing that this Durham investigation, it should, it needs to pick up steam. It needs to actually do what it's going to do, because people don't have unlimited attention spans. That's the only point I was making. I
don't disagree with that. Okay. It should, I'd like to see stuff sooner rather than later, but this is not ancient history, Carl. This is just a couple of years ago. So I suspect we'll have to agree to disagree about that. All right. We'll leave it there for this morning on that happy note. I'm Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of RealClear Politics.
And I'm Carl Cannon, Washington bureau chief of RealClear Politics, showing once again that disagreements can be civil, even friendly. And this has been the RealClear Politics Takeaway for Tuesday, February 15th, 2022.